Hi all, my name is Martin and welcome to the ExcelMakers channel. Today we are continuing our series on pivot tables. In the next few minutes I will show you how to do calculations directly within pivot tables. Before we start, let's take a look on data we have. If you watch my previous videos, you already know this data. These are sales data for multinational company which have offices in 4 cities. And in this data we have also detailed period, product and salesperson. In the comparison with last video we added also column forecast, and also with the comparison with the last video the data are formatted as a table. When we describe the data, let's create pivot table. You already know from my videos that when we have data formatted as a table, it is not so difficult to create pivot table. When you click anywhere in the table, click insert and pivot table, you can see that in this dialog window, in the field table range is automatically selected sales data. What is the name of these data we selected, which are formatted as a table, and they are named as sale data. So this range is automatically selected for pivot table. And as next, we need to also select the location where will be new table located. So we can select existing worksheet, put it to J3, and click OK. We have new dialog window for creation of pivot table, and we can create table like this: city put to rows, sales to values, and forecast also to values. Yeah, I put forecast on the first place, but it is not so important. As next, we can also set the format for these two columns, for forecast and for sales. When I double click to the header, click number format, number, use 1000 separator and no decimal places. Yeah, when I click OK, you can see we have nice format here. And same we can do for the sum of sales. Again, double click to the header, number format, number, use 1000 separator and no decimal place. Again, click OK, one more time OK, and now we have nice table prepared for the today's exercise. Today's task is to show you how to use calculated fields and calculated items in pivot tables. First of all, what are these two functions? Calculated fields enables you to do some calculation between columns you have in pivot tables. Calculated items are quite similar, but they enables you to do calculations between the items within one column. Yes, so the difference is calculated field can do differences between columns, calculated item between the items in one column. When we take a look on our data, for example, calculated field you can use to do difference between forecast and sales. But for example, when you would like to do difference between the sales by product, so for example between the product B and product A, you need to use calculated item. In next several minutes we will show both. So first of all, let's take a look on calculated fields. You can see that in the table we have cities, we have forecast and we have sales. What we can do is to add a new column which calculates difference between sales and forecast. Yeah, because me as a financial controller or financial analyst or whoever, I would like to see the difference between these two, and I would like to know if the forecast was met or wasn't, and what is the difference between these two. So how to do it? When I click anywhere in the pivot table, then pivot table analyze, field items and sets, calculated field, and now you can see new dialog window. And in this dialog window, first of all, let's name new calculated field. It could call like difference sales to FC, and formula, what is more important than name, is the difference between sales minus forecast. Yeah, you can see it is a little bit different from classical formulas when you are working with sales. Now we are working only with all columns. So when I have a formula like this, sales minus forecast, I can click OK. And you can see that, let's say, best result from the financial point of view we have in München, because we forecasted only 8,700, but our sales was more than 9,000. And you can see what is the difference. Difference is 580. And you can see that also in Prague, the result is opposite because the forecast was higher than sales. Yeah, and this is good starting point to do some analysis or maybe some discussions with sales managers why we have results like this. What is good or what is the benefit of using calculated columns is that when you change the pivot table, you still have this calculated column there. For example, what I can do is to add product to rows. I would like to see the view by cities with the detail to product and also with difference between sales and forecast. And you can see that in grand total, we have the same numbers as we had in the previous view, but we have also detail to product. When you would like to see the difference or sum or any calculations between two columns, calculated field is good option for this. For issues, when you don't want to do calculations between columns, but between items in one column, you need to use calculated item. Before we start to show how to use calculated item, let's adjust our pivot table. When I click anywhere in the pivot table, in pivot table fields menu, and in these blank areas, I can set the future layout. So what I can do is remove product, remove forecast, remove different sales to forecast. So just very simple table only with cities and sales. And as next, I would like to add period to columns. I added periods to the pivot table because I would like to see difference between periods. And I added periods to the pivot table because I would like to calculate the differences between periods. And because we have 5 periods, it is not very practical to do differences between all of them. So we can do the differences between quarters. So between period 5 plus period 4 minus period 3, period 2 and period 1. So what we can do is to use calculated item for this because as I said previously, these all columns 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are from one column, so we cannot use calculated field. Okay, when I click anywhere in the header, pivot table analyze, field items and sets and calculated item. You can see again we have to select some name for this. We can name it as difference quarter 2 to quarter 1 and formula will be a little bit complicated. We need to use also brackets. So bracket 5 plus 4, again bracket minus in brackets 3 plus 2 plus 1, yeah, and of brackets. So when I click OK, you can see we have a new column, difference quarter 2 to quarter 1. Calculated item calculated the difference between quarter 2 and quarter 1. But you can see that our table is quite confusing because we have in columns periods, but we calculating differences between quarters, but I don't see these quarters here. If you have in mind to use grouping function, I have to stop you because when you use grouping function together with calculated items, it is very difficult for memory of computer and also for calculated memory of Excel. And what can happen is that you ruin your Excel by this step. Better option is to add the information about quarters to the source data. Yeah, what we can do is to add new column to source data which told us in what quarter is actual period. How we can do it? When I go back to the data, I can add a new column behind period and in front of sales. This column we can name as quarter, and we can use this formula. I stored it here in K1, and this formula calculates from the period. You can see that we have formula roundup with the cell B2, and this B2 is divided by 3 and then it is round up. Yeah, and also the letter Q is added there. So when I click enter, you can see we have quarter Q1 for period 1. When I overwrite this formula to all rows, you can see that for the first 3 periods we have quarter 1, and for the period 4 and period 5 we have quarter 2. For getting this quarter column to our pivot table, if you remember, as we told about the cache memory, we need to refresh pivot table. When I click anywhere in the pivot, click pivot table analyze and click refresh, You can see that nothing's changed because we didn't change the pivot table fields menu and layout of the table. But in the pivot table fields, we can see the field quarter. So what we can do is drag and drop this quarter column to columns and remove period from there. Yeah, now you can see we have two new columns, quarter 1, quarter 2, and also formula 1, which is difference between the sales in quarter 1 and quarter 2. So you can see that in quarter 2, our sales was 1,120 lower than in quarter 1. Yeah, and you can see that in all cities, the sales in quarter 2 are lower than in quarter 1. The reason for this is quite clear because in quarter 2 we have just 2 months and in quarter 1 we have 3 months. But what is good is that when we will have the results for last period of quarter 2, we can directly compare in this pivot table. That's it for today's video. We covered how to use calculated fields and calculated items in pivot tables. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching and see you next time.